Outside the window, night had completely fallen, painting every pane of glass with a darkness as thick as tar. The house was silent, but that silence was no longer solitary. Maya dragged a chair to block her bedroom door, turned the lamp up to its brightest, and then sat, leaning against the headboard. The footsteps returned, no longer vague, like the night before, clear, deliberate, walking past the hallway, then stopping in front of her door, a soft click, as if someone were trying the doorknob. The night passed in fragments of sleep and delirium. Maya saw a circular room with flickering blue light. The Caldwell ancestors stood around a stone table, their faces both serene and contorted in expressions of ecstasy and horror, each one dropping blood onto the music box. The music played, not from the box, but from within them. That land, they called it Atawaga, meaning the place where the mist does not retreat. Maya blinked. They didn't want to sell? Number, they warned him, said it was a place where the boundary between worlds was as thin as a breath, a land that slept under the lullaby of those who sing without mouths. Elias paused. The air in the room suddenly became thicker. Caleb thought they were superstitious. He had Caldwell Manor built on that land, and then he began to hear strange melodies. No one but him heard them, but then his wife heard them too. The music box, Maya said softly. Elias looked up at her. He nodded slowly. It didn't originate here. It might have been from a strange market in Europe, or perhaps an exchange on a red wind night, but I'm certain it was the first thing Caleb brought back, and from it, everything began. Began how? Maya asked, her voice low, as if afraid of summoning something. Listening outside. The same way it always does, Elias replied. Isolation, strange behaviors, voices in the night, and finally, the basement. He bowed his head, as if recalling something terrible. They say Caleb performed a ritual in the circular room underground, that he believed if he adjusted the melody's frequency just right, the box could open, a gate, and he almost succeeded. Maya felt a cold shiver run down her spine. The music box, she said softly. Elias looked up, his eyes narrowing. So, you've seen it. I found it in the basement, Maya admitted, her voice growing smaller, but I don't understand what it island or why it makes everything in the house distorted, as if it's listening. Elias nodded slowly. No one understands for sure. Some say it's an artifact from Europe, a lost ritual item. Others believe it's a seal, not something that creates music, but something that holds it in, preventing it from escaping. He opened a desk drawer and took out an old, yellowed newspaper clipping, its edges curled like an old person's skin. This is what happened to your mother, Beatrice Caldwell. She was the last person to live in the manor before it was closed. Maya took the newspaper, her hand trembling slightly. The headline read, Caldwell Manor, The Missing Woman, A Strange Song and an Unsolved Mystery. Willow Creek Times, the 16th of October 1882. The article detailed how Beatrice was reported missing after several nights. Investigators found no signs of violence, only an empty room, the walls inscribed with strange symbols in red ink, and a loose diary page on the floor, which read, I heard them. I opened the door. My mother never said anything about this, Maya whispered. She only said her mother, Beatrice, disappeared when I was a baby, and no one knew why. She wanted to protect you. Elias sat up straight, his gaze softening. After the symbolic funeral, she left town and swore never to return. Many believed the curse ended when you were taken away. Maya was silent for a long moment, but now I've returned. Yes, Elias replied, his voice low. And for that reason I must ask. He studied her face, as if searching for something, behind the skin and will. Since you set foot in the manor, have you heard anything? A song, a whisper, things that shouldn't exist? Maya didn't answer immediately. Then finally, she nodded, very slightly. Elias slowly leaned forward, his voice deepening. The curse of the Caldwell family always begins with a pattern, unexplained sounds, objects moving, melodies only a Caldwell can hear. And then, the call from the basement. If it has begun, he looked directly into her eyes. Then Maya, you must leave that house. Immediately. I can't simply abandon my inheritance, Maya said, her voice low but firm. It's all I have left. The only chance to save my career and my mother's honor. Elias Harper didn't argue immediately. He just sat there, his hands clasped, his eyes fixed on Maya. Your inheritance is more than a dusty house. It is also a history of blood and the continuation of a music that those before you never stopped hearing. Before Maya could reply, a soft knock came from the back office door. The door creaked open, and a young woman entered, around her early 30s, with brown hair in a neat bun, wearing thin steel-rimmed glasses, her eyes intelligent and sharp. "Father, Dr. Vander is here to pick up his order, as scheduled," she said, then stopped when she saw Maya. A flicker of surprise crossed her face. "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know you were with someone." "Maya Caldwell, this is my daughter, Abigail Sula Harper," Elias said. Abigail, she, Island, the heir to the Caldwell estate. Abigail's gaze shifted from curiosity to analysis. "Caldwell," she repeated the name cautiously, then nodded slightly, as if confirming something that had only existed on paper. "I've heard of you," she said. "I work at the town archive, and I've studied the Caldwell family history for my doctoral thesis on psychological genetics and family myths in isolated communities." A spark of light flashed in Maya's eyes. "Then, maybe you can help me. I'm trying to understand what happened to my mother, to all the Caldwell women before her." Abigail nodded, her expression no longer as distant as before. "I will share what I know. If you have time, meet me at the town library at 2 this afternoon. I have all the documents there." "Thank you," Maya said, genuinely grateful for the first time to meet someone who didn't shy away from the name Caldwell. After leaving Elias's store, she spent the rest of the morning buying a few necessities for the house: a spare oil lamp, canned food, matches, salt, and a mechanical flashlight, imported from France. She paused for a long time at the hardware store, hesitating before a locked cabinet containing small self-defense weapons. In the end, she bought a military dagger, though she herself didn't know what for. At 2 p.m., Maya appeared before the Willow Creek Town Library, a 3-story red brick building in the Federalist style, with tall, narrow windows and a row of limestone steps leading up to a heavy wooden door. Inside, the light filtered through moss-colored stained glass, illuminating dark oak bookshelves filled with leather-bound volumes, local records, and ancient maps. Abigail was waiting at a long table on the second floor, a stack of documents and copied records spread out before her. Abigail led Maya to a small room at the back of the second floor of the library, a private study where the light was filtered through stained glass and the air smelled of old paper, dry ink, and dust. On the large oak table in the center of the room, a series of books, maps, and archival photos were carefully arranged. There were hand-drawn family trees, personal notebooks, and even copies of handwritten letters from the 19th century, wrapped in wax paper and tied with red thread. "I started researching your family about 3 years ago," Abigail said, adjusting her steel-rimmed glasses. "Initially, it was part of my thesis on hereditary neuropathology in isolated communities. But the Caldwell case is special." "Special how?" Maya asked, leaning down to look at a cadastral map from 1846. On it, the Caldwell Manor was marked with dark red ink, accompanied by a spiral symbol. Abigail opened a thick notebook filled with meticulous, almost obsessive notes. The uniformity of the symptoms and the age of onset exceed any possibility of coincidence. In typical hereditary cases, we see variation. One person might have depression, another dementia, while another might show no symptoms at all. But with the Caldwell women, everything is identical. She pointed to a hand-drawn timeline held together with paper clips. From Evelyn, died 1855, to Beatrice, disappeared 1882. Every woman began to experience auditory hallucinations at the age of 34, followed by insomnia, paranoia, and disappearing or dying within less than a year. "And the strangest thing," Abigail continued, "is that this curse does not affect any Caldwell woman who left the manor before the age of 34. Maya looked up. "Are you sure?" Abigail nodded, flipping through a file. "Like the case of Eleanor Caldwell, Evelyn's aunt, who left for New York in 1837, never returned, and lived to be 78 with no symptoms. So you believe the curse is only effective if one lives in the manor?" Abigail was silent for a moment. "I believe that there is something in that house, or under it, something that has existed long enough to learn how to shape memories, copy emotions, and use sound as its language. She looked at Maya for the first time with a gaze that was no longer academic, but a warning. If you have started hearing something, then it may already know you are here. It's a hypothesis I cannot rule out, Abigail admitted after a moment of silence. Initially, I investigated environmental factors, mercury in the well water, neurotoxic mold, leaking coal gas, but the analyses from 1883, right after Beatrice's disappearance, showed nothing unusual. She hesitated, as if crossing the thin line between reason and something else. What else? Maya asked, her voice softening. Abigail pulled out a stack of papers from the file, copies of testimonies, handwritten letters, and notes from witnesses, all carefully transcribed. These unofficial documents come from servants, neighbors, a few who visited the Caldwell estate. They had no contact with each other, but their descriptions have a strange coincidence. She placed the first testimony in front of Maya. Louisa Tremblay, a maid at Caldwell from 1871 to 1875, said that many nights she heard someone singing in the basement, even though no one was there. No words, just a melody, sometimes soothing, sometimes unsettling. Another paper. Dr. Lyle Mercer, who once cared for Evelyn Caldwell, noted in his diary that he saw shadows moving against the direction of the light in the hallway, but when he turned back, no one was there, and the shadow continued to drift. Abigail looked up. They didn't say it was a ghost. No one dared use that word, but they all agreed. There was something in the house that was not alive, not dead, just there. Then she pulled out a sepia-toned photograph, a wide shot of the Caldwell Manor, taken with a large format camera in 1880. Look closely at the attic window, Abigail said, pushing the photo toward Maya. Maya leaned down, and her whole world seemed to stop breathing. In the blurred glass of the attic window, a pale face appeared, its gender unclear, but with features very similar to Maya's, as if a distorted copy of herself was looking back. This island. Maya tried to swallow the words. My mother? No, Abigail replied, her gaze as sharp as a scalpel. Beatrice Caldwell was in Philadelphia at the time, which is confirmed by personal letters and her work schedule, and the house was recorded as empty. On that day, no one had a key. The doors were all sealed. Maya put the photograph down, her hand still trembling. The palm of her hand began to sweat, but not from the cold. What do you think is really happening at the Caldwell Manor, Abigail? Maya asked, her voice barely a breath. Abigail sat silently for a moment. Then she said, as if reciting an old prayer, I think there is something there that is not from this world. It doesn't need a reason. It doesn't need an open door. It just needs a melody to know you still exist. Abigail took a deep breath, her gaze falling to the table as she weighed each word. As a scholar, I can only rely on verifiable evidence, but as someone who has lived in Willow Creek her whole life, and as a descendant of those who once guarded this land, she paused, then looked up, her voice lowering, as if touching a taboo. I believe there is something in the Caldwell Manor that transcends our current understanding. It is not a ghost, not a toxic gas, nor a hereditary hallucination. It is a form of existence that uses sound to influence the mind. And perhaps, more than that, Maya blinked, her voice hoarse. You're talking about the box. Abigail looked at her slowly. You've seen it. I was in the basement. There was a ritual circle, and the box was in the center of a stone pedestal. It seemed alive. Abigail quickly opened her notebook, turning to a page with a hand-drawn symbol. There are mentions of this object in some diaries, often described as a wooden heart without a key or a breathing music box. But no one has ever survived to describe it in detail. I need to know, Maya said, leaning forward. Has anyone ever broken the cycle? Any Caldwell woman who heard the singing but wasn't consumed? Abigail was silent, flipping through a small file, her expression changing very slightly, like a rare thread just emerging from the darkness. There is one case, not mentioned in the official family tree. Her name was Edith Caldwell, Evelyn's younger sister. Born in 1820, she started showing symptoms at 34, like all the others. insomnia, hearing music, repetitive notes, but instead of waiting or hiding, she left the manor, alone, not to a hospital, but to see a woman named Sula, a Cherokee healer who lived near Lake Owaska. Maya was stunned. Sula, the same family name as you? Abigail nodded, for the first time revealing a very slight, almost sad smile. She was my great-grandmother. The records I have are only fragments. A deerskin with a ritual circle drawn on it. A few symbols that oppose the drawings in the Caldwell basement. But what is special, Island? Edith returned. Abigail adjusted her glasses, her voice slow, as if walking a tightrope between academia and ancestral belief. Unfortunately, Edith Caldwell never recorded specifically what my great-grandmother did. Sula, the Cherokee healer, passed away in 1846, taking the ancient rituals, which were only passed down orally, with her. Maya clutched her sleeve. Are there any descendants of hers? Someone who might still have that knowledge? Abigail was silent for a long moment, then nodded very slightly. Yes, a woman who lives near Lake Ashe, about 15 miles north. Her name is Naomi Tsula, my maternal aunt. They call her the Keeper of Melodies. I have to find her, Maya said immediately, her voice not hiding her hope. Abigail lightly touched her hand, her eyes no longer sharp and cold, but clearly worried. Before you go any further, I have to ask one thing. Have you heard anything yet, Maya? Maya was about to say no, to nod dismissively, but in Abigail's eyes there was something that made her unable to continue pretending. I heard singing, she confessed. No words, but it knew my name. A flash of pallor crossed Abigail's cheeks. She clutched the notebook she was holding, as if to steady herself. So it has begun, faster than I've ever seen. What does that mean? Maya asked, her voice almost a whisper. According to the research I've done for the past 3 years, the Caldwell women only began to show symptoms after several weeks of residing in the manor. She looked up, her gaze seeming to pierce through Maya. Unless what? Abigail hesitated, then uttered it, like a curse that had just been activated. Unless the entity, the thing hidden in the music, is stronger, more impatient, and it has been waiting for you. The air in the room seemed to contract. A silent cloud drifted past the frosted glass window. Abigail began to gather her documents, faster than usual. I don't think it's safe for you to return to the manor tonight. I have no choice, Maya replied, her voice not weak but somewhat depleted. I have nowhere else to stay, and all my papers, my manuscripts, are there. Abigail paused, then took a long breath, as if she knew she was about to do something she couldn't take back. Then let me go with you. Maya looked up, surprised. As a researcher, I can't stand by, and as someone with the same bloodline as the one who once fought it, I can't let you go alone. Maya was taken aback by the offer. Abigail, I can't let you put yourself in danger for me. I won't be in danger, she replied, her eyes shining under the gaslight of the library. According to all the documents I've ever read, this entity only directly affects the Caldwell women, not me. Besides, she smiled faintly, I know the most about what you're facing, if you don't count yourself. Maya hesitated for a long heartbeat, then nodded. All right, but if anything unusual happens, I'll be the first to warn you, Abigail said, closing her notebook, her expression unwavering. As they left the library, the sun was already nearing the edge of the forest, casting long shadows that stretched across the stone-paved streets of Willow Creek. Abigail stopped by her small house near the church to grab a canvas bag. Inside, Maya saw an old deerskin folder, a bag of black salt, a few pieces of amber-colored powdered stone, and a bone blowpipe. Family habit, she explained simply. The journey back to the manor was tense and silent. The wind whistled through the pine groves like a sigh. The tree canopies intertwined above them like withered hands, trying to obscure the way back. When the silhouette of Caldwell Manor appeared on the hilltop, the sunset light sweeping across its dark stone walls made the entire building seem coated in burnt orange blood. Suddenly, Abigail stopped. What is it? Maya asked. I think I just saw a light on the 3rd floor, Abigail said, squinting. It must have been just a reflection of the setting Sunday. But Maya knew better. She had seen it too, and it wasn't coming from outside. Inside, Maya quickly lit the oil lamps, the flickering light too weak to push back the cold, seeping from the stone walls into her bones. Abigail looked around. her hands jotting notes in a small, dark brown leather notebook, her eyes constantly glancing at the dark corners of the hallway. "Impressive architecture," she said softly, her hand gliding over the carved railing. "Late colonial style, but with distinct European Gothic elements, not at all common in Oregon. My ancestor hired an Austrian architect," Maya replied, recalling lines from Caleb's diary, "someone who had worked on a chapel renovation in Carpathia." Abigail raised her eyebrows. "An insightful choice." They headed to the library on the first floor, where Maya rekindled the fire. The small flame flared up with a crackle of wood, illuminating the dusty bookshelves and the bronze-colored peeling wallpaper. The air began to shift. Maya took out a bottle of liquor she had found in the kitchen, a bottle of bourbon with an old Kentucky label, the edges of the sticker peeling like broken teeth. She poured 2 small glasses. Abigail took one, then paused. "Do you hear that?" "What?" "The silence. It's so quiet. It's as if the house is holding its breath." Maya didn't answer, because in her heart, at that moment, something was also beginning to breathe again. "I think we should review the diaries tonight," Abigail said, accepting the glass of bourbon from Maya. "The more we understand the recurring pattern, the better prepared we'll be for what's worse." Maya nodded. She brought down a stack of diaries she had found, most from the master bedroom, a few from the small room behind the bookshelf, which seemed to have been Beatrice's secret space. They sat by the fireplace, the flickering flames casting light on the cracked wallpaper, while outside the wind howled through the cracks in the doors. Inside, there was only the sound of turning pages and the soft scratching of a pen. Hours passed. The diaries revealed a clear pattern, the singing that only a Caldwell could hear. Hallucinations of disembodied figures, just footsteps, and the sound of doors opening and closing, a strange urge pulling them toward the basement. And finally, the appearance of the music box, the center of everything. "There's something here I don't understand," Abigail said, flipping back to a section in Evelyn's diary. She talks about a ritual called the blood resonance song, used to strengthen the connection with what she calls the one below the frequencies. "It's not just a phenomenon, it's an entity." Maya silently nodded, then pushed forward a loose page from Beatrice's diary. "My mother also wrote about that, about offering blood to the music box, as if the song within it needed something to continue." Abigail quickly made notes, in purple ink. They thought the music box didn't just play music, it received music. And what it received was blood memory. A sound from the ceiling made them both jump up. Footsteps, heavy, moving clearly, from one side of the upstairs hallway to the other. "Is there someone else in the house?" Abigail whispered, her eyes wide. No one. Maya was sure she had locked the door. After they came in, they took a lamp and started up the main staircase, the wood groaning, as if protesting every step. The footsteps had stopped, but now something else could be heard. The sound of furniture being dragged, heavy, scraping on wood, from the master bedroom. The door was shut tight. Maya froze. "I left it open, I'm sure of it." She tried the doorknob, but it was useless. "Impossible, there's no lock on this door." From behind the door, a voice began to speak, deep, hoarse, and as foreign as if it came from a fleshless throat. It wasn't English, it wasn't human, it echoed in a rhythmic tone. Abigail turned pale, her hand unconsciously clutching her notebook. "Maya," she whispered, pointing to the gap under the door. A dark, viscous fluid, almost black in the dim lamplight, was seeping out from inside. It was thick, reeking of a metallic smell. Neither of them needed to say it. They both knew. It was blood. "We have to get out of here," Maya said, her voice almost choking. She pulled Abigail back from the door, and in that moment, the singing started again from inside the room, the familiar melody of the music box, but slower, more distorted, as if a copy had been stretched through another dimension. At that exact moment, the master bedroom door burst open, with a sound like breaking bones. The room beyond was as dark as pitch, the lamplight unable to penetrate. But Maya knew something was standing in that darkness. A movement, long, thin, awkward, as if its joints were misplaced. Not human. She reached for the matchbox, her hands trembling as she lit another lamp. The pale yellow light only pushed the darkness back a few inches, and that's when it stepped out. A figure of Maya herself, but distorted, hollow and decaying, a pale face with eyes like two deep black pits and a mouth stretched into an impossibly wide grin that reached her ears. Maya backed away in horror, her hands shaking. "Don't," Abigail shouted, pulling her hand. "It wants violence. It wants you to react with blood. That's how it takes root." The distorted figure began to advance, not by walking, but as if gliding silently, terrifyingly. "Run!" Maya yelled, pushing Abigail into the hallway. They rushed down the stairs, as if through a nightmare, a scraping sound hissing behind them, like claws on rotting wood. When they reached the main hall, Maya yanked at the front doorknob. Useless. The door was locked, not with a bolt, but with something invisible, as if the house had clamped its mouth shut. "This way." Abigail pulled her toward the library. They shoved their way in, Maya blocking the door with a heavy file cabinet of maps. Abigail frantically searched through the drawers, looking for an underground map of the manor. The windows. Maya rushed to the nearest frame, but when her hand touched it, the glass and wood had fused into a solid block, not nailed, not locked, but as if the house had healed its own skin. From the other side of the library door, the scraping stopped. In its place, a voice, a deep, resonant voice, as if echoing from inside a hollow skull. "Maya Caldwell." She froze, her breath caught in her throat. "Your blood belongs to the melody. The flow of emotion is our instrument. The lineage must continue the song. The gate must be reopened." "What gate?" Maya shouted, in a panic. "The one your mother fled from. The one your ancestors lulled with blood. You are the host. The string. The sacrifice." Abigail stood still, then whispered, as if confirming a chilling realization. "All the diaries, all the records, were wrong about the nature of it. This isn't hereditary madness. This is a form of parasitic possession through sound." "This is madness," Maya whispered, but she knew there was no rational explanation for what they were experiencing. "The music box," Abigail said quickly. "It's a connection point, a liminal object, bridging our world and the things singing from the other side. And it chose the Caldwells, because we are sensitive." The library door began to crack, the sound of wood groaning, as if about to scream. The large cabinet slid a little, pushed by something stronger than a person. Abigail turned, her eyes blazing. "We have to go to the basement." "Are you crazy? That's the center of everything." "Exactly. If we want to end this, we have to face it, where it began." "There's an entrance through the food pantry," Maya remembered, almost shouting. "Go." They rushed out of the library through a side door, running down a dark hallway that felt like the throat of a dead whale. Behind them, the singing rose, echoing through the walls, a distorted, slow, heavy melody, like tar. No turning back. Only music, blood, and the truth beneath the earth. They rushed through the dining room, their feet slipping on the old wooden floor. As a loud crash echoed behind them, the bookshelf toppled. The library door shattered into splinters. In the kitchen, Abigail yanked open the pantry door. Maya pushed aside some rotting flour barrels, revealing a dusty trapdoor hidden under the floorboards. "Hurry!" Abigail yelled, as the entity's long, winding shadow crept up the wall. In the faint, dying firelight, Maya opened the trapdoor, helped Abigail climb down the old wooden ladder that groaned with age, and then followed. She slammed the trapdoor shut. Just as a scraping sound echoed right behind her, the wood was being clawed, not by human nails, but by something longer. Below was absolute darkness, only breath, the smell of dampness, and a heartbeat, like a war drum. Maya struck a match, the light danced like a flickering soul. Before them was a narrow stone tunnel, so low they had to stoop. "This must be a service corridor," Abigail whispered. "It might connect to the ritual basement that Beatrice described." They walked through the air as thick as dead sap, their footsteps echoing dully on the stone. Maya held the match low, but it only illuminated a few steps ahead. After what felt like an eternity, the tunnel opened into a room, familiar to Maya, the place where she had seen the stone altar and the music box, the heart of everything. The box was still there, but now it emitted a strange light, not illuminating, but absorbing light, like an open wound of the world. "It's bizarre," Abigail whispered, stepping closer, her hands drawn back as if afraid of accidentally touching the sound. "I've never seen anything like it. It's breathing." Before Maya could respond, a click echoed from behind the sound of the trapdoor being thrown open. the sound of claws scraping against the stone walls, each scrape like a misplaced note on a violin string. "We don't have much time," Abigail said quickly, her eyes fixed on the box. "Maya, in the diaries, is there any way to stop this thing?" Maya forced herself to remember. The scrawled lines of Beatrice, the trembling hand of Evelyn. There was a passage. Beatrice recounted how an ancestor was taught a reverse ritual by someone named Sula, not offering blood by force, but voluntarily, not singing along, but counter-echoing. "Do you remember the incantation?" I only remember Beatrice saying, "They want the song to have emotion. But if emotion is stripped away, only a broken sound remains." Abigail looked at the box. It was vibrating faintly, like a vocal cord, emitting a low hum, like the bass note of a song about to begin. "If the music box lives on the blood of the Caldwell lineage, offered in fear, what if you offered it with free will, against the old covenant? Are you telling me to cut myself?" Maya asked, though she already understood. "Not to make a pact," Abigail whispered, "but to cut the string." Maya looked at the box. It was waiting. She pulled out a small knife, not decorated, not magical, just metal and determination. She walked to the altar, held out her right hand. "Not because you call me, but because I refuse to listen anymore." The blade cut into her palm, warm blood dripped down, touching the spiral symbol beneath the box. The music from the music box fractured, repeating in a distorted way, like someone trying to sing in a fever dream. The space in the room began to warp, the stone walls seeming to bend. The entity was approaching not through the corridor, but through every brick, every layer of consciousness. Abigail, her hands trembling, flipped through the old papers she had brought from the library, copies of ancient texts from Maya's ancestors. She stopped when her eyes caught a line. The ink smudged, but still legible. "They do not live on blood, but on memory, with emotion, especially the deepest emotion, connected to the source of life. To lock the way, one must sever the final umbilical cord." Abigail froze. She looked up at Maya standing before the groaning, dying music box and whispered, almost in disbelief of what she was about to say, "It's not blood, Maya. Not just blood." Maya turned back, gasping for breath. "What?" Abigail held out the paper. "It lives on emotions attached to memory, and for it to latch onto someone, it needs the strongest anchor, the memory of a mother." The room shook more violently, the music box emitting a grating screech, like a tape being rewound. "No," Maya stepped back. "I can't." "I know." Abigail stepped forward, taking her hand. "I know this is cruel, but if you don't cut the final thread, it will pull you to the other side." Maya shook her head, gasping as if choking. I can't forget my mother. She's the reason I survived everything. That's why it chose you," Abigail said, her eyes welling with tears. "If you keep that memory, it will keep you. If you let it go, you will lose her. But we will close the gate, forever." The room became disoriented. The ceiling slid as if its spine had broken, and the song of the singers shattered into thousands of female voices, all whispering Maya's name over and over, drawn out. Maya collapsed. She saw herself in a Chicago kitchen. At the age of 8, her mother was pouring milk, saying something she could no longer remember. The wind outside carried the scent of lilacs. The old radio played Chopin, and her mother's hand, gently, touched her cheek. "I can't," Maya wept. "I can't trade that." Abigail knelt beside her. "You can, because she taught you to do the right thing, even if the price is what you love most." Maya stood up. She walked to the box. Her trembling hand rested on its lid, and in that moment, her eyes became misty, lost, and empty. She whispered one last sentence. "Mother, I'm sorry, but I will write the rest with my own hands." She placed 2 bloody fingers on the central symbol, and the memory of her mother disintegrated, vanished, without a trace. The box screamed, shattered. A dark purple light poured out, and then went out. No more singing, no more calling, just silence, thick, final. Maya's blood, mixed with the last memory of her mother, dripped onto the central symbol on the altar. The music box cracked. Not a sound, not a dazzling light, just a breaking gentle like a piece of music, ending without a final note. And then, everything exploded. A light, dark, a glowing blackness. An indescribable contradiction poured out from the center of the altar. The room shook. Wind howled from every direction. Bricks and stones exploded, and in a flash, Maya and Abigail were blown back, slamming into the basement walls. Silence, thick, cold, still. Maya opened her eyes. The first sound she heard was her own trembling breath. She tried to sit up. Every joint ached, as if it had been disassembled and reassembled. Abigail was already awake, propping herself up, her face covered in dust, but her eyes were still alert. "It's over," she whispered. On the altar, the music box was gone. Only charred wood fragments remained. No light, no melody, no memory. "It's really gone?" Maya asked, her voice lost. Abigail nodded, but her gaze was on Maya's hand. A thin line of blood from the palm hadn't fully healed, and around it, fine, dark veins were starting to spread, like ink seeping into paper. "This," Maya stared. "It's spreading." Abigail bit her lip, tore a piece of her skirt, and bandaged her hand. "We need to get you to Dr. Naomi before dawn." They left the basement in silence. Caldwell Manor, for the first time since Maya had entered, was no longer singing. It was still the same place. The walls were still peeling, the wood was still rotting, but something was different. Lighter, truly empty. Maya sat down in the armchair in the living room, looking out the frosted window. "Do you think it's really over?" she asked. Abigail looked at Maya for a moment before answering. "I can't be sure, but you did something that generations of Caldwells never dared to do. You didn't just break the ritual, you broke it with your own will, with emotion, with refusal to submit." Maya looked down at her bandaged hand. Under the cloth, the black ink was still spreading slowly, not painful, but like a reminder that a price had been paid. And the most terrifying thing, she could no longer remember her mother's smile. No voice, no the scent of cinnamon she used to bake with, just a blank space, as if she had never existed. "I've lost her," Maya said softly. Abigail didn't answer. She just took Maya's hand. In the songless, tearless darkness, they sat still, waiting for dawn. Maya Caldwell passed away quietly in her small Chicago apartment, leaving behind a legacy of sharp articles, a best-selling book, and a locked wooden box that no one was allowed to open. Samuel Caldwell, 34, Maya's only son, was the one who sorted through her belongings. He thought he knew everything about his mother, a strong, determined writer who was also very reserved when it came to her past, until he opened the box. Inside was an old diary, with a dark brown cover, its pages yellowed with time. The ink was smudged, the handwriting was uneven. And then, among the descriptions of a house, a music box, and a bizarre ancient ritual was that sentence: "I don't remember my mother's face, but I remember why I had to forget." Samuel paused for a long time at that line. It wasn't just pain, it was a tear, a gap in memory, and somehow he understood that it had never been the end. 2 weeks later, Samuel drove to Oregon, following the faded address written in pencil at the end of a diary page: Caldwell Estate, Willow Creek. He drove through rough dirt roads, cutting through misty pine forests, until the house appeared from the morning fog, like an unhealed scar on the land. Caldwell Manor still stood, but it was far different from the photos he had seen in his mother's records. Moss covered the roof tiles. Weeds crept up the steps, like decaying fingernails. One shutter was missing. The windows were fogged, like the eyes of an old person. The house was not alive, but it was not dead either. Samuel stepped out of the car. The air was so cold, it made his skin wrinkle, like crumpled paper. He heard nothing, no birds, no wind, just an absolute silence, as thick as ash. As he stepped onto the rotting porch, he placed his hand on the rusty doorknob. For a moment, he felt something, not a sound, not an image, but a cold, deep, and silent feeling, like the earth beneath a grave. Maya had never returned here. Now he had come. No one knows if Samuel went inside. There are no further records after that. Only the moss-covered house, silent, as if waiting for a song to be sung again.